I'm Lea Michele.
And I'm Jonathan Groff.
And we are reminiscing about our days in Spring Awakening and talking about some of our other favorite Broadway songs or songs from TV or on the radio.
The first song that I want to pick for our Spring Awakening song choices is Mama Who Bore Me. And I'm picking this because in our documentary about our experience, watching you stand on that chair in front of that audience was so epic. And, you know, Lauren had this idea of doing a benefit concert of Spring Awakening. We wanted to raise money for the Actors Fund that raised over $24 million over a year and a half when our industry shut down for people that lost their jobs. And so we were there that night at the Imperial Theater. It was an audience full of fans that had given money to the Actors Fund. We hadn't been in the same room in 15 years. We all walked on stage. Everyone was screaming and hysterically crying. And then you walked out barefooted from stage left and stood on this chair and sang Mama Who Bore Me. And it sent me back to 2006 when you were 19 years old standing on this chair. And I and everybody else there just completely burst into tears. It was such an epic entrance and such an epic start to not only the night, but it's also the very first part of our documentary as you sing the song.
I mean, I can't count the amount of times I've sang Mom Who Bore Me in my life, but, you know, obviously because it's at the forefront of my brain now, but I think that time in this, you know, past November of singing Mom Who Bore Me, it will forever be the time I sang the song. You know, getting to come back 15 years later, we were so young when we did the show, and having the opportunity to reunite as adults and revisit this material as grown-ups was so invigorating. It was so exciting. It was also really scary, but I felt incredible standing on that chair and just getting to perform and sing again. And I was overwhelmed and flooded with emotions. And I just kept, telling myself, like, you have to start singing because we have to start this show. But it will just forever be the memory of singing that song. I'll think about that and that moment from our reunion.
We were also so young at that time. And I remember the moment in rehearsal when Michael decided to start the show with you on the chair.
Oh, because it wasn't always
that way. And I remember...
Explain, it used to be the show would start with
the boys in the classroom. Yeah.
And then
go there.
The scene would come up.
And there's something like the cosmic sort of meant to be thing of you playing Wendla was that we were a cast of people between the ages of 15 and 23 of varying degrees of experience. And I can't think of another performer that I know that at 19 years old could walk out on stage in their underwear, completely exposed, both physically, emotionally, vocally. It was just you and a guitar. And you got up on that chair and you sang that song. And every single day was like pressing play on a cast album. You sounded perfect. Even days when you were like, I'm sick, whatever, you would get on the chair and sound so perfect. And like, as a company, we were so blessed to have you in that role, owning that moment, because that was the start of everything. And to have your talent and your confidence and your star quality on such display in such an exposed way started the show better than any other way that the show could have begun.
That's very sweet of you to say.
I just can't think of another performer that could have owned that space like that and started the show. It was like so important to begin in the way it began. And then there we are in this documentary, and the first several minutes builds up to this moment of barefooted Lea Michele walking on stage 15 years later to the day that we did our first performance, getting up on that chair and starting this epic night. It's incredible. And now here's Mama Who Bore Me.
Hi, everyone. It's Lea Michele. I am so excited to be here today, and I'm so excited about our new
documentary, Spring Awakening, Those You've Known, on HBO and HBO Max, out now. This incredible documentary that shows what an amazing experience we had as a cast and family in our show, Spring Awakening, 15 years ago when we were on Broadway. And then we had the amazing opportunity of reuniting in November 2021. The entire original cast performed the show again 15 years later, and it is all there and more in our documentary, Those You've Known, on HBO and HBO Max, available now. But while I'm here at SiriusXM, one of my favorite places, and since we're talking about Broadway, let's talk about some of my other favorite Broadway songs, which feels really bad to be picking my favorite songs because I have too many. And I am sure if you asked me tomorrow, I would have a different favorite 3 songs depending on my mood or the moment. But right now, I can't stop thinking about Company. I love the show Company. And I so vividly remember Raul Esparza singing Being Alive throughout our Tony season when we were in Spring Awakening. And it was the first time that I was introduced to the musical. I love Sondheim. I wasn't as familiar with Company. And I remember hearing him sing Being Alive. And I just felt every single fiber, every single cell in my body lit up. And the words, it's classic Sondheim. And as a vocalist, it is just such a rich and beautiful song to sing. And I just feel like, as someone who throughout all of my younger years craved for love and partnership, and that feeling, that song for me just brought all of those emotions to light. I remember watching him sing at the Tonys and hearing this song, and it has been one of my most favorite Broadway songs ever since. So this is Being Alive.
Hey everybody, this is Jonathan Groff.
And I'm Lea Michele.
And we're reminiscing about our days in Spring Awakening and also playing some other songs that we love.
Our next song from our Spring Awakening hit list is Left Behind. Revisiting this material 15 years later in our reunion concert was an incredible experience coming back as adults. I think a song like Left Behind was always so moving for us to perform every night and to listen to Jonathan singing the song every night. But coming back to this material, especially now as a mother and as an adult, this song in particular, and the words and the meaning behind it, it moved me in a way that it never had before. I have a son, and for me, I found this song to be, in all honesty, more challenging to listen to than it ever had been before. This is a special performance that Jonathan gave at the SiriusXM studio. This is Left Behind.
Hi, everyone. Lea Michele here. We are having the best time talking about all things Broadway today and talking about our Spring Awakening documentary, Those You've Known, on HBO and HBO Max, available now. And I'm realizing, as we're talking about all things Broadway and as I'm giving some of my favorite Broadway songs right now, that a lot of these songs actually have to do with my time in Spring Awakening. And which leads me to my next favorite Broadway song pick, Patti LuPone, everyone. Yes, let's just have a moment of appreciation for the great Patti LuPone, everyone. I saw Sweeney Todd at the Eugene O'Neill Theater in, I think it was 2004 or 5. It was right before we went into Spring Awakening because we were the show that was coming into the theater right after them. So we went to go see Sweeney Todd, and I just remember feeling like we are going to be here. We are going to be in this theater. And I love the show, but I had never seen it live before. And I remember feeling so incredibly moved. The song has such simplicity, but yet it is so beautiful. And you know, I love a good belt from Miss Patti LuPone. But it was so amazing hearing her sing this beautiful lullaby, in a sense, although it has a dark undertone. The show in and of itself, but I just remember in that moment feeling like I was levitating. And a few years later, I ended up singing it in a concert with Jonathan, and I dedicated it to him because, as he says in our documentary, we've always had each other's backs. He is my best friend in the entire world. And I felt from day one when I met him that I wanted to protect him, and I was going to be there by his side for forever. And this song always reminds me of him. So here is Not While I'm Around.
The next song on our top Spring Awakening pick list is Totally Fucked. I think that, for me, I think we all kind of felt that the idea of reuniting for a reunion concert, I think that we selfishly wanted just an opportunity to all get together again and to reunite and to be a cast and a family and to sing these songs again, to play these, characters. But what we learned throughout the process is it became so much more than that. And when we sang Totally Fucked in November 2021, 15 years later, it was in that moment for me that I realized just how much this show means to everyone. Suddenly the night, it became not about what it means to us, but what it means to them, to the audience. I think everyone needed a moment of exhilaration and explosion after so much time in quarantine and with shows being shut down. We let loose in that moment. We grabbed each other and jumped together, and the audience was there with us. We speak a lot in the documentary about how nights like after the Tony Awards, how Totally Fucked was explosive, or the night at the Atlantic when the New York Times was there, and that performance of Totally Fucked was also an explosion of a night. And it was that at our reunion concert again 15 years later. That song is so iconic for the production and for our show. But for the moments in the Spring Awakening history that were so monumental for us, for me, I always remember them surrounding Totally Fucked. I remember doing it at the Tonys together. I remember that song the day after we won the Tonys, what it was like. I remember our last night performing, doing Totally Fucked. So for me, it's like it all kind of comes back to that song and what it means to us, but also just the audience. It's the song that engages them in the energy that we are creating. It swoops them in.
It's so true. And especially, Spring Awakening as a show is about repression and release of music. Mm-hmm. When you hand those kids in that show microphones, they get to let out everything that's inside of them. Mm-hmm. And coming out of the lockdown of COVID to do this concert and the audience, they were still all in their masks. Mm-hmm. And still, this moment, like you said, that's built into the show, it's kind of the only moment that really includes the audience. Mm-hmm. To feel that release in the theater, it was a standing ovation. The girls in the front row of the audience were basically on the stage with excitement. It's a moment about the audience as much as it is about the characters in the show. And I love in the documentary, they use Totally Fucked in such a smart, interesting way. They basically track the unexpected success of Spring Awakening. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning of the story of the success of Spring Awakening using Totally Fucked, it's like, oh, we're fucked. We can't sell the house. No one's coming. No one understands it. And as you hear Totally Fucked sung in the documentary, it takes us all the way through to the moment that we end up winning many Tony Awards. Right. And the show actually becomes this unexpected commercial success, down to the point where Steven Sater says, and we won 8 Tonys, and Melchior screams, yes! And so this is Totally Fucked.
Getting to see Jonathan Groff in Little Shop of Horrors was so amazing, because I just feel like I love seeing him in The Matrix, and I loved seeing some Life and Beth with Mr. Jonathan Groff, and of course loved him on Sex and the City. And just like that was fabulous. But Jonathan Groff on stage, there's nothing like it. He just is one of the greatest on stage performers that we will ever see in our lifetime. And getting to see him play Seymour was such a treat. I took my husband. My husband had only ever seen, I think, one other Broadway show, Hello, Dolly, which I took him to. And now he was seeing Little Shop of Horrors. But we had the best time. And I loved hearing him sing, Suddenly See More. It just is it's such an iconic role. And I think he just did an amazing job. And soon our brother and dear friend Skylar Astin is going to be making his way as well into Little Shop of Horrors. And I'm just going to have to go and see it again.
Hi, I'm Lea Michele.
And I'm Jonathan Groff.
And we are reminiscing about our days in Spring Awakening and talking about some of our other favorite Broadway songs or songs from TV or on the radio. The next song for our top Spring Awakening picks is The Dark I Know Well. I think that we were so grateful to Lauren Pritchard, who plays Ilsa, for having the idea of putting our entire reunion together, but also getting to see Lily Cooper, who is such a star. She's a Tony Award nominee. She's been in multiple Broadway shows now. She started Spring Awakening when she was 15 years old. She is a Broadway legacy, daughter of Chuck Cooper. To see her now as a mother and a woman stand on stage in November of 2020 and sing this song was so incredibly moving. This song reminds us that Spring Awakening is more than just the music and this exhilarating, score. It also is a show that has themes and subject matter that are just as important now as it was back then. We felt such a responsibility as actors playing these roles and being involved in a show that really was changing children's lives. So to honor the incredible talents of Lauren Pritchard and Lily Cooper, this is The Dark I Know Well.
Hey everyone, it's Lea Michele. We are here at SiriusXM talking all things Broadway and talking about Spring Awakening and our documentary, Those You've Known, on HBO and HBO Max, available now. And I'm having so much fun talking about my favorite songs from Broadway shows. And I don't know what, I have so many favorite songs, but right now there's no way that I can list my favorite Broadway songs and not have this next song be on the list. When I was 8 years old, I auditioned for a Broadway show. I had never worked in my entire life. I went on the audition as a joke with my best friend for fun because she wanted to be on Broadway. I'd never sang in my life before. And 2 weeks later, I was performing on Broadway in Les Mis. And that began my journey and my life. It's not Castle on a Cloud that I'm picking right now, although that is the song that I sang in the show. But it's On My Own, because I think that On My Own has always found a place in my life, no matter where I was. It was the first, when I was in Les Mis, I listened to Eponine singing that song every night. It was one of the first songs that Rachel Berry sings on Glee. And I remember when I was about to start on Broadway in Spring Awakening, I got cast in the Broadway revival to finally play Eponine, which was such a dream come true for me. But I'd spent so many years being a part of Spring Awakening and working to get it to Broadway that I felt like I had to see that through. So I didn't get to play Eponine until a few years later at the Hollywood Bowl. But to this day, this is one of my favorite Broadway songs. It is also one of my favorite songs to sing. It is one of my favorite songs that Rachel Berry ever sang. So this is On My Own from Les Mis.
Hey everybody, this is Jonathan Groff.
And I'm Lea Michele.
And we're reminiscing about our days in Spring Awakening and also playing some other songs that we love. I talk in the documentary personally about having a kind of compartmentalized life while I was doing Spring Awakening, where I was in the closet and I had like a private life at home, and then I would go to the theater. And I talk a lot about how Spring Awakening helped me deal with this shame I felt about my sexual identity. And I feel like the lyric in this song, "And now our bodies are the guilty ones," really speaks to that concept that these two characters of Melchior and Wendla have just expressed their love, and they're surprised to be feeling joyful, having done something that was supposed to be wrong or bad. I also have to give a shout out to the fans who named themselves the guilty ones. Spring Awakening had the most incredible fans, and still does. Many of them were there that night at the benefit concert. And our big revelation that night was that as much as the show means to us, it means just as much, if not more, to the fans. So this is a special shout out to the guilty ones.